This introductory webinar on the revision of GeoDCAT-AP. As you might know, next slide please, there are some practicalities of the webinar, and we would kindly ask for your permission to record the workshop, because we have already requested also for people that are not able to join to record this webinar. We will kindly ask you to mute your microphones in order to avoid disruption, and to share your questions and in the chat, or you might also raise your hand to have a discussion. As I said, we will highly appreciate if you could provide us your details, your full name and your affiliation, to have a better view of who is where are you coming from. In the previous slide, Artur, we can here you can see the agenda of today's webinar. As I said, it is an introductory webinar. The rationale behind conducting this webinar is that we have received last year a lot of fruitful feedback from the INSPIRE community, and more specifically, a lot of great interest was raised during the webinars that we have conducted under the scope of the DCAT-AP for a high value data set, as well as when we attended the INSPIRE conference in December. So, triggered by this opportunity, we thought that it would be nice to have an introductory webinar on GeoDCAT-AP, to dig into the DCAT-AP ecosystem, present the support and tools, open issues, and have a discussion and reach out to the community about this. Next slide, please. So we all know next slide. Next slide. So we are coming, we are the CEMIC team. As you may all know, CEMIC's mission since 2010 is to provide, promote semantic interoperability. In order to do this, we are providing and supporting and maintaining a number of specifications, such as core vocabularies at DCAT-AP, in order to boost the semantic solutions that we are conducting with the member states, a number of pilots, and in order to share information with the different stakeholders, we are supporting a knowledge hub that contains training materials, guidelines, and other useful assets, as well as the contents of those webinars. As I said before, CEMIC focus on semantic interoperability, meaning semantic specifications, such as extension of existing profiles under different contexts, such as the high-value data set, data spaces. We are supporting a solution for catalog of services, base registries, interoperability policy implementation, and we're also tackling the interoperability for AI. Next slide, please. So, As we said, semantic specification tries to make data transfer and available to provide a coherent and support coherent implementation of laws and policies. All of this taken under consideration how efficient things can be. We are supporting, we have two different approaches of specification, core vocabularies, which are more abstract specifications, a high-level specification, and the application profiles that are more concrete and specialized variations of other specifications. Next slide, please. So, you may already know, here you can see the list of core vocabularies and application profile, and the GeoDCAT-AP that we are going to tackle today is one of them. Next slide. So you may all, or at least the majority of you know that one of our core specification is DCAT-AP. The purpose of the DCAT-AP it is to make data sets more easily findable, discoverable, and accessible into a cross-border and cross-domain environment. We are based, the DCAT-AP is based on W3C DCAT, but the difference is that it has more constraints and uses on specific DCAT-AP properties and classes, and also includes some additional properties and uses specific control vocabularies. It is applied in a wide range of applications on that open data portals such as data.europe.eu based registries. Quite recently, under the context of data space, in the health DCAT-AP, in NAPCOR, there existed the mobility DCAT-AP, and also in machine learning, which is a variation of the ML DCAT-AP. Next slide. We needed to start, as I mentioned before, the trigger point was the expression of interest on how to reach interoperability between different actions, such as the high-value data sets, where the geospatial information is one of the categories of interest, the INSPIRE Directive, and this webinar is a joint effort with colleagues from GRC, DG Environment, and of course the European colleagues from the European Parliament, and our team, the CEMIC team. We will give the opportunity for colleagues from GRC and DG Environment also to present to their point of view. So here I give the floor to Jakub to continue the presentation of GeoDCAT-AP. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavlina. Good morning to all. Today we are here to hear an introduction to the upcoming revision of GeoDCAT-AP, which is a profile of DCAT-AP for geographical data. And let me start with giving an overview of what GeoDCAT-AP is and what are the different contexts in which it needs to be considered. I'll start with the basic use case for GeoDCAT-AP, and that basic use case is to make spatial data sets searchable on general data portals to improve their findability. The general data portals typically use W3C DCAT or in Europe DCAT-AP. However, typically the primary source of metadata for spatial data sets is the ISO core profile of ISO 19115 and ISO 19119. extended in the context of the INSPIRE Directive with some additional metadata. So the role of GeoDCAT-AP is kind of to bridge the gap between the ISO and INSPIRE world of metadata and the generic data portals that use DCAT and DCAT-AP, and to enable spatial datasets to be findable also in those generic data portals. That requires the usage of DCAT-AP or DCAT, and GeoDCAT makes sure that the spatial metadata present in the ISO and INSPIRE metadata world is preserved as much as possible or as necessary to improve the findability of spatial data in the generic data portals. GeoDCAT-AP contains mappings on two levels. There is GeoDCAT-AP core, which aims to be DCAT-AP compliant as much as possible. This means that it maps a subset of the INSPIRE metadata present in the original metadata location and transforms it to terms present in DCAT-AP. The goal here is to enable editors and catalogs working already with DCAT-AP to be able to represent also spatial data sets. Of course, then there is the extended mapping, which preserves, on the other hand, as much as possible of the INSPIRE metadata, even in case where there is no direct mapping to DCAT-AP. And it achieves that using some extensions and some additional mapping and even some new terms defined. The current status of GeoDCAT-AP is that we have, since 2020, GeoDCAT-AP version 2, which is aligned with W3C DCAT version 2, DCAT-AP version 2.01, and the INSPIRE Metadata Technical Guidelines version 2.01. The upcoming revision, which we are here to kickstart, is going to be GeoDCAT-AP 3. It's going to be finished during 2024, and it's going to be aligned with DCAT 3, DCAT-AP 3, also DCAT-AP HVD for high-value datasets, and of course the INSPIRE Metadata Technical Guidelines, which currently are in the version 2.2. Now, we have received some questions from the community already on whether GeoDCAT-AP representation of the metadata of spatial datasets can replace somehow the INSPIRE metadata regulation or the reporting of metadata in the INSPIRE community. So we would like to take this opportunity to give a disclaimer that this is not the case. GeoDCAT-AP at this moment does not replace the INSPIRE metadata regulation. It provides mapping to DCAT-AP to enable the already mentioned basic use case, to make spatial datasets described by the INSPIRE metadata to be also searchable on generic metadata portals, data catalogs. There is going to be a call for evidence during February for good practice in metadata descriptions of spatial datasets. So we encourage you to participate in that. And there, maybe GeoDCAT-AP will be identified as a good practice in describing spatial metadata. And we'll see where it goes from there. But again, at this moment, also due to legal reasons, GeoDCAT-AP does not replace the INSPIRE metadata regulation for spatial datasets. Now, to give you a little bit of a visual representation of what are the inputs for the GeoDCAT-AP specification, as I already mentioned, GeoDCAT-AP bridges a gap, and it's a gap between the world of DCAT based on the W3C DCAT and profiled in Europe as DCAT-AP. Also, in the context of high-value datasets, there is the annex to DCAT-AP for high-value datasets. So that's the, let's say, the web part of the inputs. And on the other hand, the inputs are represented by the ISO standards and their extension according to the INSPIRE Directive. And all those inputs feed into GeoDCAT-AP that aims to bridge the gap. Currently, the INSPIRE metadata is being implemented by member states in their geoportals. The mainly open data portals, but currently not anymore just open data portals are typically being implemented using DCAT and DCAT-AP. And there is also an exchange of metadata happening on the member states level, where some member states feed their INSPIRE metadata into the DCAT-AP enabled data catalogs already. So this is kind of the ecosystem of GeoDCAT-AP and the context of all the different specifications feeding into it. Now, last year, you may have noticed that OGC formed a new working group for GeoDCAT. And the aim of the OGC GeoDCAT is to provide a profile of W3C DCAT to describe geospatial datasets independent of the Europe-specific DCAT-AP. So when I add this to the visualization, it looks like this. On the worldwide level, we have W3C DCAT, we have the ISO standards, and the upcoming OGC GeoDCAT, which has no European specifics and aims to be implemented worldwide. And then on the European level, we have DCAT-AP, we have DCAT-AP for high-value datasets, we have the INSPIRE Directive. All those feed to GeoDCAT-AP. And of course, since GeoDCAT-AP is a profile of DCAT-AP, we would like to keep GeoDCAT-AP also a profile of GeoDCAT, so that all those specifications are kept coherent and interoperable as much as possible. Okay. So that was the visualization of the GeoDCAT-AP ecosystem. And now let's have a look at what has changed in the input specifications that needs to be propagated to the upcoming revision of GeoDCAT-AP. So the most immediate changes that need to be propagated to GeoDCAT-AP are the changes in the current revision of DCAT-AP, DCAT-AP 3. In DCAT-AP 3, we can see changes adopted again from one level up, from W3C DCAT 3, which is also nowadays a candidate recommendation. And from there into DCAT-AP, mainly the notion of dataset series was incorporated. Also some versioning of datasets was incorporated in DCAT-AP 3. And then there are some minor improvements, such as addition of the possibility to state the applicable legislation that is applicable to datasets and data services. And basically, this addition was initiated by the need detected in DCAT-AP HVD for high-value datasets, because there we need to specify that the high-value datasets are governed by the high-value datasets implementing regulation. However, at the same time, more use cases for the same property were seen and identified, and therefore this property made it one level up to DCAT-AP itself. Another change that you may have noticed in DCAT-AP is that it is no longer a PDF-based specification. It is now a standard online HTML representation using Respec, which is more user-friendly, and you can link to individual chapters and so on. So now HTML-based. And finally, the improvement to DCAT-AP includes the adoption of the semantic style guide, which guides editors of application profiles and specifications in general to make those profiles and specifications concise and friendly to both the editors and the implementers of those application profiles. According to the semantic style guide, there already are some application profiles of DCAT-AP itself. Following that style guide, they are mainly in the data spaces area, and to mention some, there is now mobility DCAT-AP and health DCAT-AP application profiles for specific data spaces. The revision of DCAT-AP took place during the course of 5 webinars. 80 issues were tackled in GitHub, and now DCAT-AP is also in the candidate release state. I have already mentioned, but I need to emphasize this. There is DCAT-AP HVD, which is an annex to DCAT-AP. It is compatible both with the old DCAT-AP 2.1.0 and the new DCAT-AP 3, because no major changes in DCAT-AP actually affect what needs to be specified for high-value datasets in DCAT-AP HVD. So that annex is version independent. Now, mentioning high-value datasets and DCAT-AP HVD being an annex of DCAT-AP, there needed to be some additional constraints to datasets and data services mandated or required by the HVD implementing regulation. Those additions are the already mentioned applicable legislation, which points in the case of high-value datasets to the high-value datasets implementing regulation. And then there is the high-value datasets category, 6 categories identified directly in the high-value datasets implementing regulation. Named authority list for those categories is defined, and you can find it in the EU vocabularies website. And a mapping from the INSPIRE themes to these HVD categories exists. So there is a mapping from INSPIRE themes to the HVD categories. Now, for data services especially, there are more mandatory properties. There is the mandatory contact point for the data service, and also there is the mandatory quality of service documentation for a data service. The technical extensions of metadata are, however, not the only thing that one needs to pay attention to when implementing metadata for high-value data sets. There is also a quality of metadata and service level increase when we say that some data set or a data service is in the scope of high-value data sets. And this is more of a policy engagement than a technical thing, because what high-value datasets require is that all the IRIs and URLs used in the metadata record and for the endpoints themselves are persistent, which means that it is basically a policy commitment that those IRIs used there will not change over time. Will not change indefinitely. So this requires some decent management of the URLs and IRIs used in the high-value datasets metadata records, but also data services deployments and the bulk download file URLs. So those IRIs, URLs need to be persistent. For instance, when there will be a high-value datasets report, in, I think, 2025. It will include URLs of the datasets being in scope of the implementing regulation. And in another report in in the 2 years that will come after. Again, the same data sets should have the same URLs, and the endpoints, again, should have the same URLs in the next report in the 2 years, so that the Commission can then check and understand which data sets are new and which are the same. So that's the commitment that needs to be done, in addition to the technical extension of the metadata record itself. There is another requirement, and this involves the machine readability of licensing information for high-value datasets and data services. So this licensing information needs to have a URI, and it needs to be comparable to the CC BY 4 license. It cannot be just a textual information saying something about how the data set can be reused. So that's another metadata quality increase required by the high-value data sets. And the final input for GeoDCAT-AP that I already mentioned is the semantic style guide, which guides both the editors of specifications and application profiles to make the profiles concise and themselves profilable. And it does so, for instance, by specifying the types of reuse of terms from one specification, vocabulary, or application profile in another. As an example here, I have 3 reuse types identified in the semantic style guide. One is that we reuse a term as is, so the usage is the same as in the, let's say, parent specification, or there are some minor terminological changes, or there are semantical adaptations in the current specification, and the style guide provides guidance on how to deal with those types of reuse. Now, as should be evident by now, the effort that we are taking here is kind of multi-domain, because we are bridging the gap between the world of catalogs using DCAT and DCAT-AP and DCAT-AP HVD, and the world of geospatial datasets. And one prominent use case for actually bridging this gap is the high-value datasets reporting, because the recommended way of reporting is by generating a DCAT-AP HVD compliant data catalog, which serves as the report towards the Commission and contains all the datasets from the member state that are contained in the report. And since we have this recommendation of using DCAT-AP HVD, and many of the HVD datasets come from the geospatial domain, it is only natural that this reporting should be enabled by basically crossing the gap using GeoDCAT-AP. Also, during the GeoDCAT-AP revision, we will tackle the issue of how to combine DCAT-AP HVD with GeoDCAT-AP, precisely for with the goal in mind to ease the reporting of high-value datasets as much as possible. So this is why we would like the INSPIRE community to really engage with us in this revision of GeoDCAT-AP. Now, before I get to the plan of this revision, are there any questions in the chat or from the audience already?
I don't see any at the moment, Jakob. Neither hands raised.
Benoit.
Benoit?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm from the Brussels region in Belgium. I have a question regarding the GeoDCAT-AP and the INSPIRE profile, because I think that the meeting is somehow linked with the MICT and stuff like that. I heard that there are discussions about rewriting the Commission regulation concerning many aspects of INSPIRE. So can we expect that the Commission regulation concerning INSPIRE metadata will go to a DCAT-AP profile instead of an ISO profile, or it's not up to the discussion today?
Thank you for the question. Yes, maybe Jordi can answer this the best.
Yes. In fact, the whole activity that this working group is dealing with, it's willing to establish a bridge between the INSPIRE community, which is mainly taking care of this geospatial datasets, also categorized as high value datasets, and the open data community. So in this alignment and collaboration between the communities, it's envisaged to evolve in the rules that are applied in the process of documenting metadata and datasets in the next years. But this should be in line with the Green Data for All initiative, which is taking care of the revision of the INSPIRE Directive, which is not a quick process, of course, and it's expected to be delivering the complete results by the end of 2025, not before. So in all this period, we will somehow embrace new rules depending on the results of this alignment. So what this could bring at the end is the possible integration of the data catalogs across Europe. Geospatial data catalogs, like for example the INSPIRE portal within the open data portal, and yes, activities like this. So the final aim is to reduce the burden in member states while also integrating the results from member states into a common portal at European level. So, but as also Jacob said, this will not be replacing at the moment the ISO standards, the INSPIRE standards regarding metadata, but this will evolve in the future, in the next 2 or 3 years.
I perfectly understand that it's now the regulations does not allow us to replace anything by anything else, but is this the plan of the GRC to promote such a placement or not? That was my question. Do you promote the use of GeoDCAT-AP instead of ISO, or you need to have some discussions with the member states or stuff like that?
So, as said, there is no concrete rules. It's clear from DG Environment, which is the owner of the INSPIRE Directive implementation. Let's say it's clear the objective to align the catalogs at the European level. So at the end, the solutions that we will envisage as part of the Green Data for All initiative will go in that direction. But the concretions of these alignments should be coming from DG Environment and be also agreed with the INSPIRE community through the existing governance mechanisms, like the INSPIRE MIG, etc. So I think this solved your question.
Okay, Matthias.
Yes, a question. As I wrote in the chat, we have in Sweden tried to see if we could use RDF and GeoDCAT, an extended version of it as a source, and then generate ISO, the XML structures from that, the INSPIRE stuff. So the question is, the current GeoDCAT specification kind of tells you in the other direction. How do you generate a GeoDCAT from the INSPIRE? Would it be sensible to also include in the other direction hints on how you would actually use the GeoDCAT as a source of truth?
That would be, it was not in our plans at the moment, Matthias, but if you would contribute this, then maybe other member states can look at it. But it was not in our plans of action at the moment to put efforts in that direction. But if you have something that comes out of the box somehow that you want or willing to share, then it's, I think, worthwhile to share it with the community.
Of course, I'm happy to share. The other direction was provided by an XSLT transfer by Andrea Perego. I think the other direction turned out, when I implemented it, was a bit complex. And there are places where it's not necessarily easy. So yeah, okay, it's a longer discussion. I'm happy to contribute, but let's discuss it separately.
Yes, Jordi.
Yes, just to react to this comment from Matthias, I think this would be really interesting as well. As far as I know, the geospatial metadata is richer in content, let's say. So in the case of going the other way around, so from GeoDCAT to geospatial metadata, then we will need to probably identify which elements of the geospatial metadata could not be filled by the source data, just because the geospatial metadata is richer. But I agree that this should be also a really interesting work.
A comment again, it's actually two parts. One conceptual part, which is in the specification how to treat the information, and then you have the implementation part. And I'm mostly interested in the conceptual part at this point, because I would envision multiple implementations to be realized later.
Okay, thanks for the discussion. Do we have any other inputs at the moment?
I have raised my hand as well, if I may.
Okay.
Geraldine from the Digitaal Vlaanderen, Flemish government. If we do so, there is one great big topic that we are missing maybe, and that's that ISO is not only meant to be for INSPIRE. So if we have the other way around, we only have the INSPIRE view of the ISO part in GeoDCAT, starting from DCAT. So then we have to widen our approach, I think. Now we only map from ISO the INSPIRE things to GeoDCAT. And if we have the other way around, and there is a workflow for that, that could be a solution maybe in doing such an approach. We are doing the other way around, because it's not only for INSPIRE only that we do the geo things. It's more than that. It's also for closed things. It's also for open things. So yeah, we don't have to forget all the other not INSPIRE data as well then.
Okay, thanks. Matthias, quick reaction, please.
Yeah, I had to do exactly that. I had to restrict myself when I did the implementation to the INSPIRE parts, and there were places where it was kind of unintuitive or unclear what the INSPIRE technical guidance actually meant, what is a harmonized service and so on. I don't remember exactly terminology right now, but there is a lot of restrictions you have to make.
Okay, thanks. And let me continue. Next, we'll have a look at the revision plan. This is the envisioned timeline today we are in February, and the first working group webinar where we'll already discuss some issues will be in March. The second one will be in April. You can see those dates, the 12th of March and the 23rd of April. Those dates are fixed. And then there will be a third webinar in May, which we'll specify further as the progress of the working group actually goes. There are some detailed, let's say more detailed plans already, and the revision has already started. So please have a look at the issues in GitHub in the GeoDCAT-AP repository, where you can already see what is being discussed and raised as current issues. And then in the first webinar, we'll start with the overall generic organization of how DCAT-AP and how the INSPIRE metadata view data sets, distributions, their relationships, and how they classify those with categories, keywords, themes, and such. Then in the second webinar, we plan to go a bit more specific to the geo aspects. Again, as you can have a look in the issues, there are some really specific issues regarding geospatial coverage, geographical resolution, coordinate reference systems, and so on. So that would be the main topic of the second webinar. And the third one, planned for May, there is planned the relationship with INSPIRE, some specific GeoDCAT-AP related tools and their possible revisions, and any other issues raised during the progress of the work here. So those are the three planned webinars. Please have a look at the issues so that we can discuss them during those webinars and work on GeoDCAT-AP. Maybe one thing I want to emphasize here is that looking at the dates, the time for the actual work on the GeoDCAT-AP revision is a bit constrained. So the first webinar is in mid-March, the second one is in April. So as you can see, collecting the issues, somehow processing them, and then discussing them on the webinar will be quite fast-paced. So I just wanted to point this out. Okay, let's now have a look at the supporting tools that come with GeoDCAT-AP, because GeoDCAT-AP is not just the specification and the mapping from the INSPIRE metadata. It is also accompanied by specific technical tools. And here we'd like to take the opportunity to get to know which of those tools are actually being used by you, the community around GeoDCAT-AP. So if you please could scan this QR code on your mobile phones, it will take you to our Slido poll, where you can express which of the tools that I'm going to present next do you use, do you definitely plan on using, or that you don't use at all. This information will help us in decision making later about how exactly to support those tools in the future. The first of those tools is the XSLT, which was already mentioned, that basically transforms the metadata from the XML format according to the INSPIRE Directive to the GeoDCAT-AP format in RDF according to the mappings defined in the GeoDCAT-AP specification. The second tool here actually uses this XSLT and given a CSW endpoint, which is a spatial service for basically metadata about spatial data sets. It extracts all the dataset descriptions, transforms them using this XSLT into GeoDCAT-AP, and provides basically a GeoDCAT-AP view of those data sets. So the previous tool, the XSLT, can be used by any tool able to run an XSLT transformation. This is a specific implementation that uses that XSLT to produce a GeoDCAT-AP compatible output of a CSW endpoint. Now, the next tool is still this API, but now you can see a screenshot of how it can be used. So you point it to the CSW endpoint, you say that you want to produce a GeoDCAT-AP output, and you transform, and you get the GeoDCAT-AP representation. Then there is CSW for web, which is a web-based application that allows you to go through the data sets in the CSW endpoint, transformed by an extended ad hoc version of GeoDCAT-AP, the XSLT and the API. So this is kind of a web view taking advantage of this transformation and showing what is the output of this transformation in a web application for end users. The next tool I want to mention is another XSLT. This one converts the entries from the OGC EPSG register of coordinate reference systems and creates a GeoDCAT-AP conformant representation in RDF. A sample from such a representation you can see in the slide. So again, since this is an XSLT transformation, it can run in any tool able to process an XSLT. And finally, I want to mention two tools that are kind of simpler. The first one takes a geometry and generates an IRI identifying that geometry. You can see an example of such an IRI on the left-hand side of the slide. And the second tool here generates IRIs for measurement resolutions that can be then used in GeoDCAT-AP. So again, if you are using some of those tools, please let us know through the Slido. The code for the Slido is in the chat. Now it's time for a break. But before, if there are any questions regarding those tools, please let's have them.
And in the meantime, please fill in, provide us our feedback, your feedback from to the Slido, because it will help us drag the discussion for the second part of the webinar. So we will highly appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Okay, and if there are no questions at the moment, we'll take a short break and we'll return at 11 o'clock sharp. Okay, welcome back. Let's have a look at some preliminary results of your poll regarding the tools for GeoDCAT-AP. So regarding the XSLT itself, it seems that some people are actually actively using it or definitely plan to use it in the future. The most people have heard of it, have no plan on using it, and about a third of people have never heard of it before this webinar. Regarding the API, there the situation is a bit different. Most of people haven't heard of the API actually implementing that XSLT transformation. The same goes for the web front end that allows you to go through the actual transformation results in the form of a web application. The same is for the XSLT, transforming the code and reference systems from the XML representation to the representation according to DCAT-AP. And a similar pattern can be viewed with the geo-IRI, so a generation of IRIs for specific geometries. And a similar situation is with the IRIs for measurement resolution. So thank you very much for your responses. If there is someone who didn't respond yet, please feel free to respond later. We will take all this information into account when planning the revision of the current version of DCAT-AP. Okay, before we get to our next section, which are already specific GeoDCAT-AP issues that we want to highlight and request your feedback, are there any comments or questions maybe regarding the tools or the results of the poll?
Or perhaps for people that said that they are using it and would like to share some with us. I don't see any hand raised.
I think if not, you always can share it to GitHub.
Yes, please.
More information.
Yes, in that case, let's have a look at the status of the issues in the GitHub repository, and let's point out the issues that we especially would appreciate to get feedback from you, the community. Currently, in the GeoDCAT-AP repository, we have 17 open issues. Some of those, the majority of those, concern DCAT-AP 3 alignment. So those are the dataset series and versioning attributes that we mentioned earlier. Then there is the alignment with the INSPIRE technical guidelines and the semantic style guide alignment. There are some editorial changes and some minor issue that doesn't fall into any of those categories. There are 4 issues that we explicitly request the feedback of the community, labeled feedback requested in the repository. So I invite you all to have a look at those and provide feedback on those. There are some issues that I already want to point out in this introductory webinar. There will not be much space to discuss them. I just want to point them out and point to the GitHub repository so that we can gather feedback there and so that we can discuss them there. But I just want to point them out so that you know what kinds of issues are already there. This issue, the first one I want to discuss, comes from the alignment with the semantic style guide. So to recap, the semantic style guide is guidance for profile creators and implementers so that the profiles are created in a way that is concise, easily readable, and also with emphasis on easy implementation or reasonably easy implementation by the implementers. A special focus here is on cross-profile environments, where some restrictions in one profile may cause trouble when viewing the same data set in terms of other existing profiles. So the first issue here is kind of an ambiguity of DCT type mapping on a data service that is currently there in GeoDCAT-AP version 2, where mapping to DCT type actually occurs in 3 distinct contexts. One is the context of the service category, where items from the classification of spatial dataset services code list should be used. The second context is the context of a service type, where items from spatial data service types code list should be used. And the third context for DCT type is resource types. This one also appears in a data set. So coming from the semantic style guide, this kind of reuse of the DCT type property is not in line with the recommendations, because if this was the case, or this is the case of reuse of a property with at least terminological, but maybe even semantic adaptations, which basically demands a creation of a sub-property. So the proposition here would be to create for each of those contexts a separate GeoDCAT-AP specific sub-property, which would be paired to the corresponding code lists. So this would be service category for the classification of spatial data services, service type for spatial data service types, and the resource type for the resource type code list. There, the domain of the resource type property would be DCAT resource, because this usage of DCAT DCT type occurs both in a data set and a data service. So it is reasonable to lift the domain here to DCAT resource. A similar type of issue is with DCT subject, where the DCT subject is quite a generic property. And within the context of GeoDCAT-AP, it is paired to a specific code list, topic categories in accordance with ISO 19115. You can see the details in the link or in section B681 of GeoDCAT-AP 2.0. And the motivation for change here is the same as before. So to align the usage of DCT subject, or the reuse of DCT subject to be precise, with the semantic style guide. So in this case, the proposition would be to create a specific subproperty of DCT subject, GeoDCAT-AP topic category, and pair it with the corresponding code list. Now, these two changes, as I mentioned, deal with alignment with the semantic style guide, but the issues that they cause are being or are surfacing in the cross-profile environment, where one profile makes some assumptions about a generic property, such as DCT type or DCT subject, and another unrelated profile does the same, but then when the metadata according to the two profiles meet somewhere, these requirements on the generic properties cause interoperability issues. That's why it is cleaner and more efficient for validation also to create profile-specific sub-properties for those generic properties if they are going to be used. Implementation-wise, this could be some additional effort for implementation. On the other hand, resolving this interoperability, potential interoperability issue, which is that someone would expect that code list item to be present on DCT subject, but it is on the specific sub-property. That might be quite straightforward, because for these kind of use cases, the new sub-property can be just swapped for the generic one, and that's basically it. but to enable the validation use cases, it would be nicer to, and compliant with the semantic style guide, to have those specific sub-properties. So these two issues are quite similar with similar motivations, and we welcome you to put your feedback in the respective GitHub issues. Another issue that we have, and this is more of a survey, I would say, at this moment, is the investigation of the actual usage of dataset series in the INSPIRE community. As I have mentioned before, dataset series is one of the main reasons for this revision, because it was formalized in W3C DCAT-3, adopted in DCAT-AP 3, and now we need to propagate this change into GeoDCAT-AP. However, in the DCAT-AP community, we have detected that actually dataset series as such is being used mainly as a grouping of datasets. So it does not require the same amount of attributes and relations in the metadata as the dataset itself. This can be seen in the two screenshots of a DCAT dataset and DCAT dataset series diagrams from DCAT-AP 3, where you can see that we support much more attributes and relations for DCAT dataset than for a dataset series, which really is used mainly as a grouping of individual datasets. And now our question is how dataset series are being treated in the INSPIRE community. Are they also treated just as grouping elements for actual datasets, or are they used with the full array of metadata that you would normally use with a dataset? So here we invite you to contribute your notes on how you use dataset series in the INSPIRE metadata in the GitHub issue 79.
Does anybody want to share some experience and how you are already using data series or any comment on the previous issue?
I see from Jesper that they are that they in Germany have a detailed description on dataset series, which is slightly different. So it's good that you can share it with us. So on that, I see another question on the previous topic from Geraldine. And there's about mapping between the different teams and so on, that we will take care of where it's possible. If it can be done at European level, then we will support mappings among them and share where the mappings will be found. The same as the one we mentioned earlier on high-value data sets and the INSPIRE teams, we will publish that accordingly on the right place, and we'll share that. So. Of course, if you use a local team or a local code list somewhere, then it's up to you to do the mapping. Any other feedback? I'll just repeat what was on the chat. No others.
Or any concerns or any difficulties that you have encountered on implementing data series?
Yes, Antonio, please.
Hello, everybody. In Italy, we use dataset series with the same metadata elements with respect to dataset. This is a rule from INSPIRE guidelines. But in addition, with respect to INSPIRE, we have an additional metadata element to join, to link the series with datasets. So a data provider can provide information about the series and also about the datasets that are included in that series, and in the datasets there is a specific metadata element that includes the identifier of the series in order to create the network, the links between the data series and the individual datasets.
Okay, thanks. And this is an Italian extension, which means that in the INSPIRE metadata, there is no link between the dataset and the dataset series.
Yes, in INSPIRE, but Jordi can confirm. There isn't a link in the metadata set, a link between series and datasets, but there are the same metadata element to be used for as in the dataset.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
And just a comment, and in addition to what I hear from Antonio, it would be as well of interest for us as for the modeling is in if you can share in how much these elements are, these properties are being used, because this is a typical case as well. There might be potential to be used them, but actually in the practice you might only use 6 or 7 out of the 20. So it would be good that we, if you are willing to do this effort for us as well, to share, what are really the critical pieces of information that you expect to be there on a dataset series.
Yeah, I will share that information. We use a specific metadata element coming from the ISO standard 19115 that is related to series. So we will share the information about this.
That would be wonderful. So if other ones of other member states are sharing the same information, we can get a nice overview and an insight on what is, let's say, the critical part, the core part, versus, let's say, the extended part, which is covering everything.
There was a hand raised from Geraldine.
Yeah, I put it in the chat as well. We use the dataset series as well. So in ISO, you have dataset or a dataset series conform to the same ISO profile. So the only thing that is different is that in the one hand, it's a series, in the other one, it's a dataset. And the definition is that a dataset series can be set up if the data model is the same. So we always have feature catalogs on our side. It's not mandatory by INSPIRE, but there you have the modeling. You can use application profiles as well, etc. But this should be the same. And then there are 2 approaches in the Flemish level. At the one hand, you have continuously updated data sets, so they have only one metadata record. On the other hand, we have data sets once in a while published, like, for example, once a month, once a year, 4 times a year, etc. And they have all a separate metadata records. So that's a duplication of the previous one. And if we have such a system for those data with snapshot publications, we combine those ones from the second release of such a snapshot. We combine them in a dataset series as a grouping concept. And so I put the link in the chat as well from the, I think, 7,600 data sets of the geo part in our catalog. There are 126 dataset series, and that can be in granularity very different, as we see in the different editors who fill in the metadata records. That you always group more and more, and also in space in the localization in Flanders. You can have the different municipalities, for example, and then a grouping of the whole in the Flemish region as well, etc., etc. So the only premise is like, yeah, that the model needs to be the same, like the ISO definition says.
Sorry, if I can, I wanted to add a clarification. It's not mandatory for a data provider document both series and datasets belonging to the series, but the data providers can decide to document only the series with general information about the series and the datasets, but can also decide to document both series and the datasets belonging to the series. So in our catalog, we have only series with no datasets included in the series, and can have also a series with all the datasets described specifically.
Okay, thank you. And do I understand it correctly that in the case of a dataset series that has no datasets described, you also provide, for instance, a link to an endpoint URL where you or a user can find or access that the data of the series?
Both for series and datasets, there is the requirement is to provide a URL to the series or the specific datasets if a specific dataset is documented. So the rules about the URL is mandatory in both cases, series or dataset.
Okay, thank you.
That's the ISO case. You can say this is my child as a series, and so the child is also related to the series. So that's provided in the ISO specifications.
Okay, if there are no further immediate questions about the dataset series, please post your usage notes on dataset series into the issue 79 in the GitHub repository. I just want to mention another issue that we have found there, and that is that some properties, like concerning spatial coverage, such as DCAT-B box, bounding box, or a centroid, they, in the GeoDCAT specification, they have a cardinality 0 to 1, which could mean that there can be only one instance of this B-box or centroid property. But then in the specification, there is a note saying that geometries may be provided in multiple encodings, such as WKT literal or GML, and that actually at least one of those encodings must be GML or WKT. And the usage here is compared to how we treat the usage of language-specific texts, such as titles and descriptions of datasets, where we typically also say that a dataset can have one title, but what we mean by that is one title per language. But there is an inconsistency now, because in DCAT-AP, this is explicitly said as a usage node, and the cardinality is unrestricted, whereas in GeoDCAT-AP, there is an example, as we can see in the slide, showing the multiple usages of DCAT-B box, one as WKT and one as GML. However, in the specification, the cardinality is 0, 1. So this kind of needs to be made consistent. And there are two propositions. And again, feel free to let us know your preferences. One is to lift the cardinality in GeoDCAT-AP to and propagate that change also to DCAT-AP, because this property bounding box and centroid is coming from DCAT-AP, where the cardinality is limited as well. Or the other alternative is to limit this to one representation. Then the example would have to be changed. But the question to the community is whether this is preferable or whether actually we want to allow multiple encodings of the same geometry to be present in GeoDCAT-AP. Another issue I want to point out comes from actually DCAT-AP, so one level up, and it is more of a request for recommendation from the geospatial community. It deals with the fact that currently spatial coverage of a data set, so on the metadata level, can be expressed in many different ways. There can be various geometry types, points, lines, polygons, multi-polygons, and so on. Each can be represented in different geometry representation, GML, WKT, GeoJSON. Now there is also a new specification, I think FGJSON, being developed as a successor to GeoJSON. Then each of those also can be used with a different coordinate reference system. So on the web, it is common to use WGS84, but in Europe, it is common to use ETRS89. Also, there is a variety of national ones. And all these possibilities are allowed to be used to specify the geospatial coverage of a data set. The problem with this, and also the motivation for this request for feedback, is that it is hard for the implementers to support all these representations of spatial coverage in, let's say, a data portal. So if in your data portal, you want to do a geospatial search for data sets falling into a polygon, for instance, that portal needs to implement or use kind of a heavyweight geospatial processing library to be able to process all those different encodings, shapes, and coordinate reference systems. So the question here is, would the geospatial community help us in reducing the possible options here so that the implementers of the data portals could maybe have easier time implementing geospatial search on top of the described data sets? I need to specify that we are still talking about metadata. So we want to enable spatial search over metadata. We are not saying that in the data itself, we should kind of reduce the possibilities of usage of coordinate reference systems or geometry encodings. We are talking about metadata to enable better reuse and search over this representation of spatial coverage of a data set. So would it be possible to maybe recommend a limited set of coordinate reference systems, geometry types, and their representations so that those could be recommended? And we could say, if you want to enable geospatial search of your data set in, let's say, data.europa.eu, please use a bounding box encoded as WKT using WGS84 as a coordinate reference system. And the rest of the options are kind of not so recommended. Could some guidance like this be specified? So this is the request for feedback from the geospatial community to aid the DCAT-AP community. And since this is the last issue I wanted to discuss, there is some space to discuss this already in this webinar. So are there any opinions on this proposition?
I see some comments in the chat from Geraldine. Geraldine, would you like, and Peter, would you like to take the floor, Geraldine and Peter?
Yeah, we have, for example, in Flemish level, an own thesaurus with all the bounding boxes of the municipalities, of the provinces and the Flemish level, so that everyone uses then the same coordinates exact of that bounding box. If they say it's a municipality X, for example, that it's exactly the same. So it's all about aligning. Do we foresee then on the European level a full list of these or all the possible bounding boxes that we feed? That can be done. And in there, we have indeed for the bounding boxes in DCAT, the DCT spatial element with the envelopes going to the CRSs of the OGC OpenHIS.net, for example. I don't know if that is then the best thing to do, but yeah, they are about the biggest geo standardization mechanism at this point in time, I think. So maybe we can take them and then define lower and uppercase corners for all the GML cases. And then if we have that total list, that can be used for everyone, I think. But yeah, there are the geo names as well in DCAT that are stated. So that's two should be aligned then, and etc. etc. So it's about alignment, I think. Really.
So if I understand it correctly, you have a list of possible bounding boxes to be used for dataset description.
Yeah, in our Flemish level, yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. Would you know which CRS and which encoding is used in those?
Yeah, I mentioned one in the chat, for example, and I mentioned also that thesaurus. Yeah, if you click on that one, you will see indeed that we always go to that, or the EPSG is also another one, and then have those bounding boxes as lower corner, upper corner, and with the GML. That's our approach at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other approaches being used? Okay, so if we don't have any other comments at the time, please have a look at the issue and provide your input on this so that we can improve interoperability of, well, at least spatial coverage of datasets described by DCAT-AP and enable a spatial search on top of them. Yeah, so these are the issues I wanted to point out and request your feedback from. Now I give the floor back to Pavlina for the closing and the next steps.
Yes, thank you for this. Let's try a bit to clarify some things. First of all, as I mentioned, the intention of the webinar was to start making some progress and revamping GeoDCAT-AP in order to meet the open world and the geospatial communities. As you can imagine, and you saw also from the issues that were presented, a part of perhaps the easiest part is to try to align GeoDCAT-AP current version 2 with the DCAT-AP version 3, and what this also implies and how it tackle different properties and to what extent the needs that are covered from GeoDCAT-AP needed to be escalated to DCAT-AP as such, as well as we mentioned through the style guide, the effort, and here is that we would highly appreciate your feedback, is to have a common a way of implementing different application profiles based on the style guide of that we have created under the semantic action, if and where this is applicable. To give you an idea on this, we have applied, we tried to apply our style guide on how to treat the application profiles to the health DCAT-AP specification. So, as you may understand, the first part of would be for our future work is to try to align the current version of GeoDCAT-AP with the DCAT-AP version 3. And there will be the topic of the first webinar that we would like to conduct the 12th of March. However, as it is crystal clear, there's a second part that needs to be tackled, and also was mentioned here, that has to do with how we map information between the GeoDCAT-AP with the INSPIRE and ISO standard. And here it will be something that we would like to tackle from the second webinar and perhaps the third webinar. So on this, we would highly appreciate your the feedback of the geospatial community. Here is a more, you can see a more detail of the webinars. However, what I found somehow surprising is the fact that from the slide, the poll, we didn't, there was no clear knowledge about the already existing tool and their usage, which will be the content of the third webinar, because it is our common effort with colleagues from the G environment and GRC is to provide a tool that will help bridge the gap between the communities. And here I would I would like to make a small repetition, if we can, Jacob, take the lead and try to explain a bit, I don't know whether we have explained them sufficiently, the different tools to remind to the community of the different tools that exist. And then after this, I would like to give the opportunity to the colleagues from GRC and the DG Environment. They would like to make a statement, add something. So, Jacob, can you please go back to the slides with the tools?
Yes, of course. The tools that we have mentioned that exist with that come along with GeoDCAT-AP are the XSLT, the transformation script that actually implements the transformation from the INSPIRE metadata in XML to the GeoDCAT-AP representation in RDF. As we have seen, this one is being used, or is definitely going to be used by some of you, or maybe a majority of you. But then the other tools, they didn't get as much attention, and that is the API that actually takes this XSLT and converts the contents of the CSW endpoints, extracts all the data sets, transforms them using the XSLT, and produces RDF representations in multiple serializations. Then this is the UI of that API. And this is a web application that enables basically end users or not so technical people to go through the records in a CSW endpoint transformed using the XSLT in a web-based application. Then we have the XSLT that transforms the EPSG register and creates an RDF representation of the coordinate reference systems found in the registry. And then we have the tools that generate IRIs for geometries and for measurement resolutions. And that's it for the tools.
Okay. So thank you very much, Jakub. I see some comments in the chat. Somebody, for example, Jasper would like to add something because I see some discussion about the binding box and whether they are polygons. So somebody would like to take if you would like to share with your thoughts, it will be nice. If you want to take, you can take the floor. Otherwise, I don't know whether here you can see where you can provide us the feedback that we would like to receive from your side. Bear in mind that, as we said, the slide will still be open and can so that everybody that would like to share some feedback and having also a second look on the existing tools will have the opportunity to do this. As we said, the next step is to receive your feedback to create a draft version. And what is critical for the community is the fact that the GeoDCAT-AP mapping to high-value dataset will be done as a separate document. And here I would like to give the floor to Yuri or Jordi if they wanted to say something to step in.
I just ask Yuri if wants to add something on behalf of DG Environment.
You're right. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thanks a lot. So thanks a lot for this first webinar. I think it was quite interesting and very good discussions. And this is leading us the way to a further kind of, well, it's not an integration, but an alignment of the two different flavors of dialects that we have under existing legislation. I think that's most important fact of it, that there is this kind of push and obligation on the member states to implement still the ISO under the INSPIRE Directive and the DCAT-AP now under the high value data sets as common practice open data directive. So these two things, as we had the discussion in the very beginning of the webinar, as Jordi very well explained as well, it all depends on the further or the revision or possible revision of the INSPIRE Directive and the impact assessment. Well, I think it would be very helpful to have this kind of mapping between the DCAT-AP, and I'm very happy that I think it was Marcus or Matthias who actually also made the proposal to do it both ways. That could be very helpful depending on the tools that we are using. So I think we made very good progress already in this first webinar, and I'm really looking forward to the further discussions, maybe online or on GitHub, trying to solve the issues raised right now for the next webinar, so that we can straightly move ahead to a common consensus on how to map ISO to DCAT and vice versa, satisfying all the legal obligations from the INSPIRE Directive, the open data and the high-value datasets implementing regulation at the same time. I think, and that is something that we envisage to happen before the summer. This will give at least some clear guidance to member state implementers how to implement both the high-value datasets. We used INSPIRE efforts from the past metadata implementations as well to satisfy these obligations at the same time to get ready for the reporting exercise in February 2025 next year. I think that is the grand plan here. And as I said, thanks a lot to the CIMIC community for leading and coordinating this and organizing these webinars, which are very welcome. And I also want to thank everybody from the INSPIRE community who joined us today for the good discussions as well, and to be continued. So we have the next meeting this Thursday, 23rd or Friday. And anyway, the 23rd of February, we have a technical meeting of the MIC where we'll discuss briefly again the work that we're doing together with you, with the CIMIC community, to get more people involved even than the ones who are already here today, for involvement of the INSPIRE community to drive to this common consensus of mapping DCAT and ISO standards. So thanks a lot. I'm not going to take you any longer. People will have to go to lunch at some time. So, but that's it from me. Maybe Jordi, if you still want to come in on the appreciation or the of some final words. I don't know, but this is it for me. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry. Now I share your impression. So I think it's quite important to establish these bridges and between the both communities in order to be able to have new paths in the future. So we will see which are these paths, and the intention is to align as much as possible to this new approach of high-value datasets and be able to exchange information between both communities. So, I strongly suggest people from the INSPIRE community, geospatial domain, to join these webinars on that have been planned during the spring. So nothing else from my side. Thank you.
Thank you all for your contribution and participation, colleagues from GRC and the DG Environment. Thank you all for attending. We look forward to receiving your feedback and to co-plan future steps. Have a very nice evening.